we go.
There we go.
Finally went live. It finally went live. It always catches us. Can't wait to see that screen grab. Anyway, welcome to the Carolinas Weather Group. Thank you for joining us tonight. It is June the 1st. Happy meteorological summer. Happy tropical season. What else am I missing? Anything else? I think that's the two bases to cover. Anyway, happy Wednesday. Happy June 1st to everyone. Thanks for joining us here on the Carolina Weather Group. We hope that you have all had a great Memorial Day weekend and got to partake in some kind of activities outside. It was a beautiful weekend if you dodged the thunderstorms. But anyways, thank you for coming on. Welcome. Thank you for watching the show tonight. We don't really have a topic. It's open mic night, open forum night. Just going to kind of toss around some ideas and talk about those. And if you are watching tonight and you want to join in on the conversation, please make sure that you go to our Twitter handle and type us in some questions, some topics to talk about at Carolina WX Group, and we'll be sure to check up on our Twitter throughout the show and cover those topics that you want us to. This is a live broadcast, so you can do that, or on our Facebook pages. You can send some questions that way, and we'll get those answered as well. And if you're watching on the rebroadcast, we'll make sure to follow up on any questions that we don't get to in the show. We'll be able to do that as well. So I think that's about it. Talk a little bit about what's coming up in the next few weeks before we go into our show tonight. We're going to be talking about hurricanes for the next few weeks. We have a load of guests coming on next week. I know Rob Fowler from Charleston. Peter has been working diligently and has got several great guests lined up coming on next week. And the 15th of June, we're going to continue that topic, talking about hurricanes with some of our other Mets who are in Myrtle Beach and Wilmington and places like that. And then on the 22nd, we're going to kind of wrap up the hurricane theme and talk with some emergency managers who live along the coastline and talk about how they are preparing in their offices as well, how they're preparing the folks who live in their communities to prepare for hurricanes and tropical storms. So we'll be glad to have those folks on, and I know that will be a great reminder to all those who live along the coastline, because as Shay can attest to, it's been a while since we've had tropical development of any major kind. I know we had Bonnie. We'll talk about Bonnie here in just a little bit, but a good reminder for those folks who live along the coast or who have properties along the coast. So enough blabbering tonight. I'm going to toss it around to our guest. Everybody who's on tonight has been on our show before, so I'll kind of let them introduce themselves and kind of talk about what's been going on in their area. And I guess the one guy who's had the most activity this past weekend was our good buddy Shay, who lives in Charleston, who had to battle tropical storm, depression, whatever it was, Bonnie, down there in the low country of South Carolina. Shay.
Yeah, thank you, Scotty. Yeah, we had a rather weak tropical system come right into Charleston, actually, and went inland, sort of meandered around for a little bit, headed back south, southwest, back to the south-southeast, out back over the ocean, back inland again. So sort of wobbled along the coastline, and I really hats off to the GFS ensemble for sort of getting that right by suppressing it to the south along the coast a little longer. Most of the other models had it racing off to the northeast sooner, and it still is affecting southeast and outer North Carolina right now. So yeah, we've had quite a bit of rain, not so much in the Charleston area, but more or less inland. Some of the areas south of here, down near Ridgeland, South Carolina, picked up quite a bit of rain. In fact, I'm going to pull up a couple of things here. I'm going to try to find our, well, I'll come back to that in just a second. But here's some of the rainfall totals that, in fact, you know what, first I need to share the screen. Let me pull that up.
That's usually helpful.
Yeah. Okay, let me know when you can see it.
We're good.
Okay. So here's some of the rainfall totals. This storm really was more of a rainmaker than anything else. There really wasn't much wind. The rip current forecasting was moderate to high from the National Weather Service weather forecasting offices up and down the coastline, from Wilmington all the way down to even Jacksonville, Florida, handled some of that as well. So really it was a rip current situation. There was very, very minor saltwater flooding, if any at all. More of this was rain that was propagating inland and kind of wrapping around the storm. So The WPC really kind of got this area right from days out, although they were only calling for about 4 inches total. This area really got inundated, so you know, that's pretty good that they actually circled this area as a hot spot for rain. I'm not sure exactly how they did that, but they really got it kind of right as far as where the more rainfall was concentrated. So I definitely want to show this picture here. This is kind of a memorable one that. Sorry, I'm scrolling through. I had this up a second ago. Must have reset.
Shay,
So
let
bear with
me
me.
ask you, as you get that up, were any of the high-res models kind of picking up on these, areas of really hefty rainfall totals?
These models right here in this one.
Yeah, like were any of our high-res models, HRRR or NAM4, stuff like that, picking up on these 7, 8, 9-inch rainfall totals?
Well, yeah, the HRRR 3 kilometer picked up really well in the timing of when the first outer bands were going to be coming into the coastline, so we had a pretty good idea of when the rain was going to start. From there, it sort of dispersed the rain. I wouldn't say evenly, but it was a little more focused north of Charleston at first, and then with each initialization every hour, things were just changing so much for the HRRR 3. The main thing was that it was giving a pretty even swath of rain throughout the Charleston area, and I'd have to go back and look at some of the later initialized runs on that to find out what they said later on as the storm was coming ashore. But the WPC really had the best guidance on this one, Ricky, as far as where the focus of rain was going to be. Let's see, here we go. Some of the Cocoa Ross stations were reporting back. This is Cocoa Ross, South Carolina, from the Charleston area, and they just listed a few of them here with the MSC and all these places. The MSC's to the south. Folly Beach, 6.28. I'm not sure if that is absolutely correct or not, but Ridgeland, South Carolina, 10.36 inches, and this is just over a couple of days span. So this is what happened on I-95 in Ridgeville, South Carolina. So you can kind of see that it wasn't a non-event. In fact, what most people were saying, Bonnie, was barely anything at all when it hit the coast. Some areas were affected greatly by the system. So especially since we haven't fully recovered from the October flooding series, it was a rather unique event in the fact that flooding is still a major issue in some areas in South Carolina, especially near the coastline.
I did want to add. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's interesting, like what type of recovery have you guys not got back up to, just in terms of like infrastructure or what?
Well, infrastructure has been a problem for a long time with our roadways, and our roads are getting old in the state, and it's an ongoing battle. I think the governor is talking about it. Many people are discussing infrastructure and how to handle volumes of people and get these roads to where they won't do this anymore. So, it's one of those things that you got to kind of wait and see what's happening. That's what the series is going to be starting with the next week about hurricane evacuation preparedness, and hopefully we can get some emergency management crews on to talk about what maybe they might know from the SC Department of Transportation later on down the road.
All right, well, Shay, I was going to ask you a funny question. Our buddy Brad Panovich was also down in the Folly Beach area, so I want to know, did you see him doing any Jim Cantori acts down there on the coast trying to, as the storm was coming in?
No, I did not.
We joked him. We was like, yeah, you just wanted to go down there and get in on all the action. So, but yeah, I'm glad it wasn't as bad wind-wise. I know you guys had some flooding, but glad it wasn't too bad down there for you all.
No.
In the Charleston area.
Get back to Ricky's question. I'm sorry. We talked a little bit about the infrastructure, but as far as coming back from the October flooding, I still think that our water tables are really high underneath the surface, and they just haven't had time to sort of percolate down and get into their deep aquifers. So everything is just still saturated after all this time, and there's no telling when we'll climb out of it. But the rivers flood fairly easily these days, and our marshlands and the flooding events, it doesn't take very much, especially with an astronomical high tide. It's pretty much a done deal that a lot of our roadways and some of the park areas in the Charleston area at least are going to be underwater.
All right, well, let's go up the coastline a little bit, up to the Jersey area. And Peter, you guys actually got in on some of the rain as well up in your part of the world.
We sure did. Everyone was a little PO'd on Memorial Day because, here in Jersey we go down the shore for the Memorial Day weekend, and it was pouring much of the day on Memorial Day. So everyone was a little not happy with me that day, but oh well. But I'm very tired of hearing everyone complaining about the heat because we've been 80s and humid for the past, I would say, week or so, and everybody's complaining about it. But they don't think back of when back in May when it was like 60 every day, raining, cloudy, just horrible. So I can't help them. I'm enjoying it. I don't care what everybody else thinks. And I'm whipping out the plaid short-sleeve shirts, so that's all that matters.
All right. I'm going to work on my mic, so Ricky, you want to take over for a little bit?
So no sunburns from Jersey Shoring on Memorial Day, Peter?
No fist bumping, nothing. That was just horrible.
What fun is that? I did see you got a few pictures on local stations recently. You had a few nice little storms. I saw the cool outflow boundary you guys had yesterday.
Yep. It was riding right into the coast, so it was nice.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, let's go a little bit down the road and jump back a little bit further south and say hey to Kit over in North Carolina. I would say at UNC Charlotte, but he seems to have wandered off campus and back to his humble abode there for the summer. Kit, what's happening down in Carolina tonight?
Well, I'm still here in Belmont, or back in Belmont, I guess I should say. We had a good pop-up thunderstorm yesterday. It was weird. They were all spawning off of an outflow boundary from a lot of the mountain counties. But today, like yesterday, it was just stagnant. It stayed from all the way up from Catawba and Lincoln County, straight down basically Highway 321, and over into Belmont, Mount Holly, and parts of Mecklenburg and York counties. Today, similar things started happening, but what happened today was the outflow boundary, and I was working outside, so I felt it come through. Well, something formed to my northeast, to my northwest, skipped over me to the southeast and southwest. There were 4 storms all around me, and I could count on one hand the number of raindrops I felt. So lots of thunder and lightning around me, but nothing today. But yesterday I tried out a periscope for the first time in a while. Had a couple of viewers. So if anyone else wants to follow me on Twitter and or Facebook, here is my link.
It's
lower third's not working for us.
Oh, all right. Well, let's say hey to David as well. David Reese joining us for, what is this, the 3rd show? I believe you've been on 4th show. I've been away for a while, so my apologies if my number's off.
I'm trying to remember now, too. I believe it's my 3rd, but how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing all right. What's happening up in your neck of the woods?
Oh, well, I was able to take some time off from work. I headed down to the area Saturday day and got a nice little pop-up shower over the top of us Thursday. Other than that, it was hot and humid down in Atlanta, a lot hotter and humid than I've had to deal with in the past almost year. And then closed out the month here on a nice string of 80-degree or warmer days for the month of May. That's saying something considering we saw 19 days where the temperature was below 70 degrees, which is highly unusual. It was thanks in part to all that rain. Now we're seeing a lot of sunshine, and we have a little bit more shower activity the next couple of afternoons, but next week is looking amazing. Lower humidity, temperatures near 80, very seasonable for this time of year. So it's one of the reasons why I enjoy Virginia here in the summertime months. I'm growing accustomed to it. Let's just put it that way.
Are you guys ahead of schedule in terms of your temperature? I know we hit 90 here in Bristol for the first time today. Typically we don't hit that till like later portion of June.
Yeah, I saw your tweet earlier. The average for you guys is what, June 19th? Average for us is about May 19th, May 20th, and we have yet to hit 90 degrees. We got close a couple times last week. We hit 87 degrees, 87, 88. We hit 86 or 87 degrees today. So we've got close, but not quite. I don't think we'll get there for the next couple of days either, but we're behind schedule in that department. We finished just ahead of schedule in the rain department for meteorological spring, but today has been dry thanks in part to the remnants of Bonnie bringing a little bit of subsidence our direction. But the cold front off to the west of us looks to bring us our first decent chance of rain since early last week.
because you guys have been wedged in a few times in the recent weeks.
Oh yeah, I mean we saw what 20 days with rain this past month in May, and we finished the month with a 72.5 degree average high temperature, so slightly below average for this time of year. But hey, after growing up in Florida, being in Columbus, Georgia for 20 plus years, I'm okay with holding off 90-degree temperatures and obscene humidity.
Gotcha.
David, what was your rainfall total for May there?
At Cho, which is the airport up here, we finished just over 5.5 inches. At McCormick, where they've been doing observations since the 1890s, they picked up just over 7 inches of rain. They're separated by about 10 miles as the crow flies. What was the email? I'm trying to remember where it ranked as far as rainiest Mays on record, at least at McCormick. It was up there. I think it was top 10, which is saying something considering the records go back to the 1890s. And then it also had, let's see, where's that email? Because I just saw it yesterday. Yeah, we finished with 7.17 at McCormick. It was the 10th rainiest May on record in 124 years. The record was 11.5 inches set back in 1912. Now they also recorded 21 days of rain in the month of May. The second most ever, the most ever was back in May 2003, where we had 22 days. So we got close for the year. We were at about anywhere from about 16 to 20 inches of rain across the area.
Wow.
So not doing too bad. No significant drought yet.
Alrighty. Scotty, are you back online here? Is your mic better this time?
I think so. Does it sound better?
Yeah, that's better. We got you now.
All right, good deal. Well, let's toss it over to Memphis right quick. Eric, you're back with us. Memphis weather. How are you guys over there in the Tennessee area tonight?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me on tonight. And yeah, we've had pretty good amount of rain as well. May was actually just really close to normal. We ended up with about 5 inches of rain here in Memphis, but our temperatures were averaged about 10 degrees warmer than y'all over there. So we had our first 90-degree day last week. Memorial Day was 92. Humidity starting to creep up. It's meteorological summer, and it starts to feel like it around here. We're getting up close to 90 with dew points in at least mid 60s. We got a couple of lower 70s on Memorial Day, so it was toasty for sure. But yeah, we're doing pretty well, running right about where we're supposed to be for this time of year. So
awesome. Well, Eric, we're glad to have you this evening as we get into the show to talk about anything about weather. Before we do that, I see that Patrick has joined us, so I want to give him the opportunity to introduce himself and kind of talk about how the weather's been down there along the North Carolina coast.
Can you guys hear me? Just want to make sure.
We gotcha.
Okay, just want to make sure because I got a new computer in the time period that I've been on. So, anyways, meteorologist Patrick Ellis is down here at WECT in Wilmington, North Carolina. We've had one heck of a week. Let's just say that with so many different things going on. And I told Scotty I was going to be the angry old man tonight because so many things that went right but also went wrong with our forecast for this past week. But here locally, it's been kind of a hit and miss type of thing. We've had clouds, we've had sunshine, we've had rain, and good doses on either side. When you look at it, temperatures have actually been running a little bit below normal because of all the cloud coverage and also the humidity. Good night. We've had dew points low 70s the last couple of days, and even worse probably as we head towards the end of this week. We might have some dew points maybe 72, 73, 74 even as we head towards this weekend. So we're starting to get to that time period here in southeastern North Carolina that it gets hot, it gets humid, and it stays that way. Rainfall-wise, though, we're doing good. We don't have any issues. We had a little dry spell there in April, but have since eradicated that. We've got no issues now. But I'll tell you what, the last couple of days have been a fun ride. And if you follow me on Facebook or Twitter, I may have angered a couple of people about what has happened over the last couple of days with messaging, and I think that's what I'm going to talk about tonight is about messaging.
Just a couple?
Just a few angry people who may or may not have gotten the ban hammer this week.
That's the best hammer.
Just,
It's the only hammer.
It's the good hammer. I mean, like I basically said, look, folks, we talked about this for 6 days straight, that it was not going to be a washout this weekend, and we still had people coming to us and telling us that we had a 90% rain chance, which was never true. I don't think at any point we had over a 50% rain chance in our forecast this weekend.
It's interesting, though, and I assume it's probably the same type of thing that you guys had, how those probabilities are made, and of course they're different depending on what, but I had the Weather Channel on watching coverage Saturday morning in our weather center in Bristol. We had a 90% chance of rain in Bristol. We didn't get a sprinkle that day. I don't know why they had that, what geographic range they used, what they used to do it, and telecast data didn't even have a whole lot of stuff, and that's usually where I think they get that information from. But it seemed odd to me, and I mean, I'm going on a rant, but 90% of that crap goes into apps, and then those apps go out to the public, and then those publics come back to us and say, they said, and yes, I'm ranty, sorry.
Oh no,
Ricky, I totally agree. I had someone from work tell me, hey, they're calling for a 100% chance of rain this weekend. I said, well, I can't agree with that. I just will not agree with that. You can't. And I said, where are you getting that information? Oh, he had I'm not going to say who, but it was an app. It definitely was an app. Mm-hmm. And I could just say, hey, look, it could be hit and miss here. Don't cancel things. This is a very weak system that's coming ashore. Don't believe everything you see.
I don't know if I've ever even put 100% chance of rain on any forecast I've ever made. Only because I've never seen it rain 24 hours during the day. And yeah, I get some people think that it's percentage of rain. Mm-hmm. So I think I would put 90 before I ever put 100 on a graphic.
I think it is a big perception thing, especially with a tropical system. I think that there was a public perception that this thing's coming on shore. I either don't need to be down there or, it's going to be a complete washout anyways. They thought that you're going to see all these huge rain bands coming on shore. This thing's down at Charleston, south of Charleston. Saturday, we saw sunshine, and I talked about it, sunshine, the clouds, to some showers. We had a feeder band come on shore about 8 o'clock. On Saturday evening. It rained for about 2 or 3 hours, and then it was dry until probably, I think, the next morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning, we had a downpour come across Wilmington. I'm sitting in the weather center. I'm looking at our sky cams. We got one down at Wrightsville Beach and one in Wilmington. The one at Wrightsville Beach was completely sunny. That, as far as the crow flies, that's like 4 miles. In downtown Wilmington, I couldn't see downtown from the battleship. So, and then after that, we were dry for about 6 or 7 hours, didn't see a drop of rain, and people were still yelling at us saying, you got the forecast wrong. I said, where did I get the forecast wrong? I was like,
when you think about it, Patrick, it's almost no different than a summertime day. I mean, you get pop-up showers and storms that just kind of come and go, and it drenches the beach for a little bit, and then people run back inside, and, and then they come back out, and it's a beautiful day.
Yeah, no, we couched it as that. We said it's going to be like August outside. It's going to feel like August, for one, and then it's just going to act like August. You're going to see sunshine, you're going to see clouds, and then all of a sudden it rains on you for about 15 minutes, and then you go back outside, you're doing your thing. And you may go many, many hours without seeing rain. And I think Brad Panovich had a great blog post about this, about how a lot of people said that this was not going to be a complete weekend washout, and I know for certain we were saying that here in Wilmington, because again, we're a big tourist town. We didn't want people to come down here and completely lose their plans, especially paying for beach houses, things like that. And I think a lot of people who daily consume our weather message got the message. It's the people who were trying to blend 4 or 5 different messages together who got very confusing things. I had one person come up to me and say, well, I thought it was, actually my neighbor came up to me and said the other day, I said, I thought it was going to be a whole weekend wash. I said, Phil, you could have walked across the hallway and knocked on my door and asked me if it was going to be a weekend washout. But I think there was a lot of people who saw the Weather Channel app, who had a 90% rain chance, who saw the AccuWeather app, pretty much the same idea, who saw the national media painting very liberally dark greens across the eastern Carolinas, and thinking to themselves, well, maybe I shouldn't go down to the beach. Then you have people who still came down to the beach anyways and said you got it wrong because you saw something else, even though our messaging for 6 days was this is not a complete weekend washout. And I had to lay into a couple folks this weekend because they were getting a little, banhammery, and let them know it's like what you're saying is wrong, and then they still argue with you about your forecast being wrong when it was actually right.
I do have to say a positive spin on this. I was able to do the weather for the NASCAR races in Charlotte the past 2 weekends, and they were very app happy the first weekend. I think it was the 20th and 21st of May. But this past weekend at the Memorial Day, the Coke 600, I actually was in a meeting with them Sunday morning and told them, hey, as the day goes on, we're going to start to dry out. That's not what your weather apps are saying. It's painting a rainy day throughout the entire day, and they actually did kind of listen to the professional instead of depending on the app. So I thought that was pretty cool, and Ricky can vouch for me because Ricky's been down there with me as well. NASCAR really depends on their apps, and I was kind of taken back that they were actually valuing what we were telling them.
I just want to know what the app is, though, Scotty, because I will honestly trust their app if they just let me know what it is. I mean, if it's like WDT or something, and I'm not saying it is, but if it's some company that provides an app to them that has a specified forecast, then I would trust it. But if it's like Dark Sky or something,
I believe that's what they use.
My girlfriend's dog
I believe that's what they use.
If it's like Dark Sky or something, then I don't know.
I know a lot of the NASCAR media uses that, and actually one of the guys tweeted out, and we had an open discussion, and he talked about it as being that it's a free app, and people want free instead of actually paying for an app or getting a trusted opinion. Why, I don't know. All they got to do is send a tweet out or a question, just like Patrick said. You can go over and knock on your door, Patrick, and he could have got the forecast, but they still look at this, I guess, because it's more convenient. I don't know.
That doesn't shock me, though, because, I can see two sides to that. The people saying that...
You're a good boy, Rick.
All right, so I have a dog named Forrest, and Erica just came over, and she was trying to get him to give him his paw to shake, and so that's where you see in the background. You know how sometimes we have random cats walk by when James is on? Well, you have a random dog in the background now. Anyway, what I was going to rant on is, it doesn't shock me, though, that they say people want free. I think they do, to a certain extent. But eventually, when you buy stuff from the Dollar Tree so often and it breaks, after 3 or 4 months, eventually you buy something a little nicer. And when you pay for a quality product eventually, or even in terms of television, don't pay for a quality product because ours is free over the air, it's like, where do you draw the line, and when do people start caring more? I mean, when you've got people for their wedding day, which to me I would argue is the most important weather day of your life, perhaps, just relying on an app or the AccuWeather 90-day forecast,
I wrote a blog about that one, too.
Well, Eric, you guys do your app. So tell us how do you put your input into your app, and then Patrick, maybe you and David and Ricky can kind of talk about your station's apps and how that weather information comes.
Yeah, I was gonna comment. Most of these that are the free apps outside of the local television stations, I think, most of those are driven either by advertising or just by bulk because they have so many of them out there. That they can basically afford to make one app and get it out to the millions of people, and most of those are model-driven apps. So when you get your forecast, even if it's a high-res model that they're using, that's where you're going to get those real crazy chances of rain and stuff like that because it's the high-res model has something a big blob of precip moving through your pinpoint area, and so it tags it with 100% chance of rain when that's not necessarily realistic. So basically, there's a couple of different ways that I kind of approach this. I've got two different apps. One is a local one here for Memphis, and that app is a 99-cent download, so it's not free, which means I am probably losing some customers because of that. But what they get in there is a forecast that I have put together myself. So the forecast is not just a model or a couple of models blended together. It is a human-generated forecast, a meteorologist who has looked at all the models and put that together. And so I find, and most people that have used it find value in that, and so they're willing to pay the 99 cents or whatever to A, not have any ads in the app, and then B, get something that's human-powered. The other way that I think is probably one of the really good ways from a national perspective is we have a governmental agency that has meteorologists in local sites all across the nation. Why would I try and forecast someplace across the country when I have forecasters for the National Weather Service at that location that know the local effects, know what's going on in that area, and how systems, how the models typically handle systems there? 6,000 meteorologists across the country are not going to always be wrong. And so I am a big proponent of using the National Weather Service forecasts over computer models in the apps as well. That's the way my second app handles it, which is a national app. And so I basically pull in what would be the point forecast from the National Weather Service for the location that you put in. So it is not driven by the GFS or the Euro or the latest flavor of the high-res, whatever. It's the National Weather Service actually QCing that data, even if it isn't the hand wrote, for your specific point. They're using multiple model blends and then QCing all that. So that's the way I think it ought to be done. It's the reason I do it that way, and I think it makes the most sense to leverage, the professionals in the area where you're getting the forecast from. And I'd be interested in knowing how some of the TV stations and stuff handle their apps as well, because I know a lot of them are driven by the company that provides their weather system, and whether that's the company's corporate model or whether you can go in and actually tweak that forecast for your local area and override, the app forecast.
At our station, which is WCYB, we have an app. We have the WSI app, which powers our Storm Track 5 mobile app. We have the ability to override everything on there. I'm trying to find it to see if I can't bring it up and just show y'all.
I got it pulled up for mine.
Okay. Yeah, we can do it. It's a forecast editor, as Patrick can explain here, if we want to have Kit screen share that.
Let me share.
Yeah, I'll present.
And I should clarify, this is WSI in our case, but there are other providers such as Barron, and I'm not familiar with what they use, unless someone else on the panel uses them.
Well, I have Weather Central, so I actually don't have access to that forecast stuff, ironically enough, and that's something that the meteorologists here are trying to figure out how to manually update all of that, because we don't have that WSI app available to us, ironically enough.
You should.
So
I feel like you should.
I feel like we should too, but to my knowledge, we do not. We have not been told that we do, but we do have a weather app available through our TV station. But the person who developed the app is no longer here at the station and hasn't been for the past year and a half, and no one here knows how to get in and update the weather stuff.
Oh wow!
And most of the time, it's not too far off. Like it has, like I just looked at it, it has better rain chances Friday and Sunday when cold fronts are supposed to sweep through the area. So I looked at it; it's not too bad, but still, it's something that definitely should be looked at and improved upon. We do have text forecast that is available on the app, and that's a little bit better. But sometimes people just want to look at, hey, what's the icon, what's the number, and go on about their day.
Can everybody else see the screen I got up there?
Yes.
So this is our editor. It's through WSI in Telecast, and we have it set up to have multiple zones. We have the Wilmington metro area, then we have our Sand Hill zone, which is Robeson and Cumberland counties, and our northern tier zones, Duplin, Onslow, Sampson County. Inland is let's see, that is Columbus and Bladen, and then coastal would be the beach locations of Pender, New Hanover, and Brunswick. So we have all these different zones. We only really care about 3 of them. We update 3: the Wilmington Metro, Inland, and Coastal. And we go through there every single day, put in a 7-day forecast, but you can go out to 10 days. And we also have the ability to adjust the hour-by-hour forecast. And we do that for each of those 3 zones because we know that people are going to look at their crap app and see a 90% rain chance. Because whenever I come in here, I can scroll through here and sometimes see there's some craziness in here that was not changed earlier down here at the bottom.
And this defaults, correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, but I'm pretty sure it defaults in Telecast.
Yes, this is a default. So our forecaster, so Eric Davis was our forecaster this evening. He went all the way through to about noontime yesterday for Friday. And notice after that, once you start to get new data in, it just starts filling in crap. And there's the crap right there. 87% chance for rain. 55% chance for rain. 54% chance for rain. That is what is being populated and what is going out to people's apps. What people are seeing in their weather apps. Now, I can go in here right now and change this real quick to not 67% chance for rain. I don't even know why that is what it is. Let me do that now. Let me actually do some work. But
now, Patrick, to get this information to change it, would you be looking at downscaled 2-meter models? I mean, would you be looking at something in the immediate 24 to 48 hours versus a week out, and then just sort of go with a blended guidance?
This is 48 hours worth of guidance. So we just go through there and we take the MOS data. And what I personally do, I'll take the 6 hourlies from MOS data and then kind of tweak it in between. So say I have a temperature at 2 a.m. or 6Z. So then from 6Z to 9Z, I take those temperatures, kind of blend them together, and kind of move down the line. And we'll look at everything else to kind of get an idea. Obviously, our main forecast, we're going to look at everything, and it will adjust to that as well. So say we end up going more towards a Euro idea rather than a GFS idea, and the Euro is printing 87 degrees and GFS is painting 93, for instance. We'll go in there and make sure that we have the hourly set up to our forecast and not to just MOS, I guess. But MOS is kind of the general guidance that we use to blend in here.
So Patrick, this is Eric. So when you make the changes like you're doing on the editing to that, does that just change the app, or does that change any of your content that goes on air?
It changes the content that goes on air. We have hourly forecasts that go out all the way out to 48 hours. It's called ICAST data. As soon as I hit publish down here, it will go to my core at the station and render into our graphics system. So I don't even have to do anything. I mean, once I push publish, that's going to TV land.
You have to go through and change basically all those boxes, though. So if you change that 87 to a 20, you need to change the wording and everything, or does it do it automatically?
Because what I'm doing right now is changing the icons.
Yeah.
So as soon as it changes the icon, it just changes the wording as well. So then I'll hit publish, hit OK, and now max core 453, which is ours, successfully updated, and now we don't have an 87% chance for rain for Friday.
And now I know how to hack into your Mac system too.
Hey, don't get crazy and mess up my Macs, all right?
I already messed up mine enough by playing around with stuff, so.
Well, speaking of apps, we don't do too much with rains, but we do winds with Wind Alert, and I think I got Patrick hooked in, and
Yes.
this is an example of our Mesonet. So all the yellow stations that you see here are part of the WeatherFlow Mesonet, and so we have the coast pretty well covered. The models that we use, we have a whole suite of models. So you have the HER3, which goes out for 12 hours. So if you're looking for winds, you can always come to Wind Alert to find out what's going on. We do have mediagrams that we provide. Let me blow this up a little bit, and you can sort of see here it's just a very general forecast for rain, clouds, temperatures. These are all model-driven. Our Quick Look Plus forecast is a blend of 3 different models. So we usually jump from the HER3 to the NAM12 to the GFS out to the 7-day period. We get wave heights and some other calculations in there as well, and that's pretty standard for wind forecasting. But what we have that differs is that we have a whole suite of models versus a coarse resolution model. You can pick and choose, so we educate all of our users. Don't look at just one model, look at all of them for the immediate future and see which ones go out the furthest and which ones are going to be more applicable for your area. So some places do very well with the NAM5, and that tends to do pretty well for the southeast, but others find that some other models may be successful for their areas as well. I think southeast North Carolina does pretty well with the NAM5 and the HER3, whereas OBX may not. It's just a little bit of a difference in latitude there, especially when you get up to the Virginia Beach and Delmarva area. But always you feel free to check out Wind Alert and for your wind needs if you have them, and you get wind graphs and all kinds of bells and whistles. Pro forecast. We even do our own human forecasting here. So this is one. Let's see. I think I did. Yeah, I had this one done tonight, and we have our own outputs that we can manipulate as well. So we go in and we actually have a table that we adjust the wind speeds for throughout the day, and we can do these 2-hourly, 1-hourly, anything else. And then we do an extended forecast for all 3 regions. So there's some literature there. So that's an example of an app that we actually are a part of. We're integrated with it on a daily basis throughout the forecast season and even the winter season. So check it out.
In which it was very helpful during Bonnie. We were sitting. I shared. Shay helped us out with getting an account, and we were using it here in the Weather Center. I didn't get to take it to air because we ended up not having a Sunday morning newscast, but we did use it a good bit here in the Weather Center, and my news director was very enthralled at the fact that it was a market exclusive. He loves that. He's like, oh really? Market exclusive. Okay.
Yeah. So we're working in the southeast region right now. I think we have 1 or 2 more stations. We're trying to fill some gap coverages in between both Cape Fear and Cape Lookout, but our latest one's at Federal Point up to Cape Fear River, and that was a really big gap coverage point for us to catch those northerlies. And then, some of these areas, when you zoom in, you find that there's more and more stations. At Charleston, I've got it pretty well saturated here, so we can capture what happens, and especially during tropical systems, hurricanes, or even storm systems, we can see what's going on out over the water, and the local Mets here just love it. So it's and a lot of cities, coastal USA, have a fairly well saturated area of weather stations. I think OBX is probably one of the most. They got a ton up there.
Shay, let me ask, what was the highest wind gust that you guys saw during Bonnie?
I really didn't see much past about 20 knots. I think 21 knots was the most that we got on the beach because the winds were so shifty and offshore at times. You would get a pulse or 2 over the Charleston Harbor, and you'd see the wind, you'd see the trees blowing a little bit, inland. But somewhere near those thunderstorms, you probably saw the higher gusts. In fact, the National Weather Service, the highest amount of wind that was ever forecast for this event was 40-mile-an-hour plus. So we're talking 35 to 45-mile-an-hour wind gusts around associated thunderstorming, along with banding coming into the coast closer to the center of Bonnie when it was coming. But we can look at archived data and go back in time. That's another great feature of this app is you can go back and look. So 22 miles an hour at 7:40 p.m. on Friday, May the 27th, was the highest for that day in Charleston Harbor. I think along the beaches, we may have seen a gust or 2 a little bit higher than that, but I think 31 miles an hour Sunday, May the 29th was our highest gust at 30 miles an hour, 9 o'clock a.m.
Wow.
And that was that was in association with a little squall cell that came ashore. So I think that was really the most of it. Now, some of the gradient offshore, there was some higher winds out there. I think we had 25 to 30 knots on one of these 2 days. Might have been this one the highest. Yeah, 38 miles an hour, 7:08 a.m. That's just offshore Capers nearshore, just a few miles offshore of Isle of Palms. So I would say that's probably one of the higher gusts that we saw in this area. And that's another great feature of Wind Alert is you can kind of go back and look through all of this data. And there's even statistical readouts for the months for the entirety of how long the station's been in service there. So this is an example of a good app that with good information for you to gauge what's happening with these storms. We do have radar enablement and satellite and some other features in there that you can watch in real time. But as far as rainfall, we don't really record a lot of rainfall. We have the capability of showing a swath of total accumulative, but we're more about the wind. So that's kind of our forte with our apps.
You know, with those winds, those aren't even above tropical storm force. And we had tropical storm warnings up for the entire coastline, Patrick.
Thankfully, we were not involved in that. we were sitting there like, are they going to issue for us? And thankfully, ILM did not pull the trigger on that. Well, the NHC didn't pull the trigger on that, but oh my goodness, we were thinking to ourselves like, is Brunswick County about to go underneath the warning too? But it came right up to Little River Inlet, and we had people calling and saying that we were not telling them the information because they live down closer to like Carolina Shores and Sunset Beach in that area, and we weren't giving them the information that they needed to know, even though that they really didn't see anything, and those people were seeing sunshine for a good chunk of Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Well, speaking of tropics, it's a good way to transition into everything Carolina. Jay Powell, Carolina, on Twitter, who is actually from Wilmington, Patrick. So if you don't follow Patrick, you need to. Jay Powell, Carolina. He wants to know, or they want to know about the possibility of some tropical features being in the Gulf of Mexico in the coming days, and he also says the Hurricane Tracker app is something that he likes. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that, the possibility of maybe something brewing in the tropics in the Gulf of Mexico in the next few days.
It's not a question. I think it's.
I've been keeping an eye on it just because
Us landlocked people seem to keep an eye on tropics more than the beach people sometimes.
We don't want it anymore. We're good.
Well,
the only reason I'm keeping an eye on it is because my family still lives on the west coast of Florida, so I'm like, Gulf of Mexico storms kind of worry me sometimes, and I just let the family know. But even then, still so far out, may have something down there trying to brew. I was just looking at the 18Z GFS, and it was entertaining. It gets one low up in between the Cancun and Cuba there, and then tries to get another low to spin off the peninsula, and it's pretty entertaining. I'd side more with the Euro at this point.
I will say this: when we look back at the modeling from Bonnie, I think the GFS and the Euro were fairly decent on at least showing the system. I mean, for several days on end, I mean, very consistent. We were kind of sitting here wondering because our lead-off forecast for Memorial Day weekend for Saturday, when I forecasted on Sunday morning for the following Saturday, I had a partly sunny, 10% chance for rain, and an 86. We got nowhere near close to 86. But you know, we had to adjust the forecast as we started to see that data coming in, especially Monday when we started to see more successive runs of the GFS and the Euro coming down, saying, all right, well, there's a system that's going to be brewing. Do we get the full benefits of this, or do we get kind of the fringe benefits? That was the big question for us, was whether or not is it going to come up to Cape Fear, or is it going to come down closer to Charleston, or is it going to head up towards Cape Lookout? There was still a lot of uncertainty in that part. But I think that the messaging was there. Keep a lookout to the tropics. We knew where it was going to form. It's just where was it going to go necessarily, and it was really just difference of a couple, 50 miles either way from Wilmington, 50 or 60 miles. It really depended on what you were going to see.
Yeah, I have to say I was impressed, and I know I keep talking about the GFS on this one, but it really did kind of bring it right near the area where it went, and it held it there. It was right sitting right on the weak end of a ridge axis from the Bermuda High, and then you had a little weak ridge in the Appalachians that was just sort of suppressing it to the south, and it really did not a lot of movement with this system. There's no upper level forces that were moving this system. I mean, you had an upper trough kind of horseshoeing around it. With a negative tilted trough. You know, it was supposed to break away and be centered right in between both legs of this trough, and it really just it really pulled that eastern leg over with it. So that's what brought that atmospheric river over North Carolina and up into Virginia and those areas. So that was rather unique. I wasn't expecting that. I thought a surface low might be able to escape the connection with that upper trough, but it really just kind of hung with it. It was pretty interesting. But the GFS suppressed that system to the south for a couple of days, which it did really well. I think the highest model that built the system was the H-Wharf. Got that to about a medium level tropical storm, I think 50, 55 mile an hour winds, something like that, in its nested resolution there. But it was kind of interesting, and you know, the Canadians really they didn't go that crazy on it. I mean, the tracks got a little bit squirrely, but they really went that far off either.
I was going to say, even the H-Wharf, the track wasn't too bad either. So
yeah, I agree with that.
The track for the H-Wharf, it was just bombing things out, which it sometimes has a tendency to do. But overall, it wasn't horrible.
All right, and an aside real quick, now that I've jumped in and caused a lot of trouble tonight, I'm going to jump off because I have to go pack because I'm heading to Nashville tomorrow for an air show. So thanks for allowing me to vent tonight, guys. And I'll see y'all a little bit later. Scotty?
All right, thanks, Ricky. We can continue the tropics. I know we had a few other things. I know, Eric, you were talking about doing, you guys just wrapped up a busy month of May there in Memphis talking about event safety. We can talk a little bit about that. And I know where Patrick's at with you guys being there on the coast, I know that's a big concern with you all with thunderstorms moving into the coastal areas. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that and how everything played out there in Memphis, Eric.
Well, Scotty, before we move on from Bonnie, I do want to do just one quick screen share. I've got her up on radar, or what's left of her. She still looks kind of intimidating. In the past hour or two, I'm not making I'll preface this. I'm not making a forecast of intensification at all, but it's got a little bit of a circulation concentration, I guess, from just a bunch of thunderstorms to now you've got this one area that has, I guess, an islet. It's the center of circulation of all the thunderstorms. But on the wide scale, like, it's got a lot of dry intrusions. Like, I don't think it's going to do anything, but just something cool to look at, that she's still trying to do something.
Let it go, Bonnie.
Yeah, it looks almost like an MTC. I think one of the tracks takes that to Ireland eventually.
It's like in the Gulf Stream out there.
Yeah, it is.
Right. You see this down here. Oh, wow. Okay, that's a lot closer. Right through here is right where the Gulf Stream typically moves. So that's probably what's getting it a little bit more organized. That's giving it some fuel. But looking at all these hail markers, it's got a lot of lightning in it, so it's definitely subtropical by this point.
And we were even still getting rain bands today from Bonnie, from the remnants of Bonnie. I mean, still pinwheeling in across our area even this morning. We've had a couple of downpours through Wilmington on occasion, and it took us a while to finally break out of the clouds, and we ended up with a really pretty sunset. But it took a while for us to finally get to seeing some sun. I mean, we're just so laden with moisture right now down here. I can't wait until this next cold front comes sweeping through here, and I guess that could be another topic as well. A very interesting day 5 for the eastern half of the United States.
Oh, you were seeing that too, huh?
Yeah, I was like, wait a second.
Sorry, I had to do
sorcery?
that too. Hey, listen, Eric, I know I want to get right back to your question, but I think, Scotty, I want to answer the gentleman who asked about the Gulf next week. because I don't know if we completely answered his question or not, but we did talk about the models are starting to come in a little bit into agreement here with the GFS pulling up into Florida, and then the Euro model also doing the same thing. The thing about this system is it's going to be a quickly forming system. It's going to be quickly moving. You also have the jet stream, which is going to be on the increase. As we get into Sunday, there's going to be a dip in the jet stream down in this direction. You're going to have an upper trough working up from here, so there's going to be a lot of upper shear over whatever develops in this general vicinity. So there's going to be a lot of cloud tops being blown off of it, and this whole thing is just going to get really pulled right out into the Atlantic and out. That's what it looks like at this point. So just to answer your question, it looks like there could be something tropical in nature come together, but it's going to be fast moving and probably scoot out of the area pretty quickly. Doesn't mean it won't drop a lot of rain, but the easterly trades are going to pulse in from this direction and bring a lot of moisture to this area and convection, and then it's all going to move off pretty quickly once this jet stream increases up top. So that's kind of my perspective on it, to get back to your answer.
All right,
I think there's a 0% chance it's going to hit Memphis. That my app tells me.
and again, I think I forgot to screen share that whole thing, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. Oh well. You had a good description.
I give up on the tropics.
All right, well, Eric, let's go talking about the busy month you guys had in May and how the events turned out with weather coming in and out of those days.
Yeah, sure. So we have, I actually support a few different events, actually a couple of series of events that go on here in Memphis area as far as just providing kind of support services, consulting, and the month of May is a big one. We have a month-long festival, a series of events here in Memphis called Memphis in May. And if you've been around this region, you've probably heard of it. But it's basically an international festival. There's an honored country each year, and there's a lot of different events during the month that the city does. They kind of tie into it. But there's three great big outdoor festivals that take place, and one of them is usually the first weekend in May. It's called the Beale Street Music Fest, which is a 3-day afternoon, evening, deep into the night music festival, multiple large stages set up. This all takes place down on the riverfront here in Memphis, in a great big riverfront park that we've got. And that draws tens of thousands of people over those 3 days. And then a couple of weeks later, we have the Memphis in May International Barbecue Cooking Contest, because where else would you have a barbecue cooking contest but on the Mississippi River in Memphis? But that draws participants, teams that spend thousands and thousands of dollars to come and be a part of this festival, and teams from all over the nation. In fact, there's even some international teams that come in. That is a 4.5-day event, and then it concludes at the end of May with a 1-day, usually some type of a family type of event that's a little more toned down than the other ones, lot more family friendly and so forth. But this is all outdoors. It involves, over the course of the month, well over 100,000 people. And the last couple of years, I've been fortunate enough to basically support those outdoor events with support services. I'm sitting with the communications and operations folks in a trailer that's rented out for the month with the radar running and the walkie-talkies to be able to speak with the operations folks and so forth. And basically, my job is to make sure that the participants, the patrons and so forth, and all of the organizers are kept up with what's going on and make sure that everybody's safe and comfortable, and that those who need to know, for instance, if there's going to be high wind that might affect a stage or lightning, that's going to be a threat, the normal type stuff you would do. Give them as early heads up as possible to that stuff. So over the course of those 8 days or so, I think I spent about 80 or 90 hours down on the river looking at radar and keeping them updated. And it was a very wet month. We had some storms that came through, but we got very fortunate in that almost all of that inclement weather that would have caused problems occurred outside of gate hours. leading up to gate hours, even within an hour or two, a couple of times where we'd have. In fact, we had some pretty interesting weather a couple of times where squall lines moved in overnight and then kind of dissipated in the early morning hours over the Memphis area. One of those actually produced a wake low over Memphis that affected the downtown area, and we didn't get any thunderstorms out of that. Again, it was before hours. This was about 7, 8 in the morning. But everything is set up. Of course, all the stages are up, all the pop-up tents. All the infrastructure is out. The thunderstorms basically died right over the city, so they didn't have much impact from that. But there was 50 to 55 mile an hour winds from a wake low. And so, even outside of hours when the gates are open and people are there, participating, there's support that goes on with that as well, because on that particular day they ended up delaying the opening, which I think was going to be at noon. I think they delayed it till about 2 o'clock because they basically had cleanup and restoration to do of all the services. There was tents blown all over the place and stages that they had to make sure were secure, and fire marshal codes were still met and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of that went on, and unfortunately there was very little direct impact while people were there. But it's kind of a year-long event. The event has just run its course. But they're already starting to look towards next year here within the next month, and how do they plan? What kind of they've got a pretty thick security and safety manual that that's put together on how do we handle this event, that event, who coordinates it, and so it was interesting to be a part of that this year and kind of helping to, they allowed me to use my expertise to go in and kind of review the weather sections of that and make sure that it was, what they had was appropriate, and so that's really interesting to kind of see behind the scenes how all that works, and who makes the call when you have 20 or 30,000 people in an area like that that's wide open. There's no big shelter. You can't just say, well, there's lightning, let's just move them here and then bring them back. When they have to declare a weather emergency, basically. They evacuate this park of all these tens of thousands of people, and there's really not a good way to open it back up. There's no reentry. There's how do you manage that big number of people? So it's a pretty big deal when they have to do that. So and they really they started using a person to kind of watch the entire event like this, a consultant, when a couple of years ago there was a tornado warning that was issued for a rotating storm that went basically right up the Mississippi River. The mesocyclone went just across the river from the park. It was after dark, about 10 o'clock at night, and they had to evacuate the park, but they were doing it based on where can we get our weather information, rather than having a person there who could actually look at the radar and tell them, this is going to hit the park or it's not. So there's a lot of savings done on their end too, a lot of risk reduction by having someone there to help manage that. So so that was my month of May. Took time off of work to be able to go and participate in those on the weekends and late in the week, a couple of weeks there.
Wow. Yeah, those are stressful situations. You got so many people in such a small area that you're responsible for. There's safety weather-wise, so. A lot on the plate there.
And there's a lot of micro-scale type of forecasting is done too, because you're looking at a very small area, and if a broken line of storms is coming through, there was one in particular where basically it looked like a line of storms was going to come right through the park, but there were some gaps in the lines, and the park got missed. It went right between a couple of cells, and if you were just looking at your app, or you were just relying on, my general weather knowledge of even the operations folks who are somewhat versed in that, they might have taken other action thinking they were going to get slammed by this, when actually, if you watched it carefully, we were going to get split, and that's what I let them know it was going to do, and they could kind of breathe a little sigh of relief knowing that there'd be lightning, within a few miles either way, but at least knowing exactly what was going to be happening.
Yeah, Eric, those wake lows are really tricky. I remember watching an Ask the Sioux with Frank Alsheimer, the National Service Charleston, on gravity waves and wake lows. And one way I've been able to catch those wake lows is when the cold front goes through. You look behind there on the wind readings, and if you still see a southwest wind cranking up, then you probably have another low coming in behind the high pressure behind that cold front. So it's kind of a 1, 2, 3 with a tightened gradient in between the two frontal boundaries. Usually associated with those dips in the jet stream. But I tell you what, those things are tricky, and there's been some people that in the wind and water sports that have gotten caught in those winds because they seemingly come out of nowhere. What you would think might be a gust front really is not. It's a wake low that is increasing the gradient very quickly for an elongated period of time. So they're not just getting a 2-minute burst. It can be 30 minutes sometimes to an hour.
Yeah, and they of course are going to trail the precipitation rather than be out in front of it like the outflow would. This one was actually kind of a surprise, just because I wasn't watching real closely because it was 5 or 6 hours before the gates open. I knew that line was going to be moving through and gone before then, and it really came up as kind of a surprise when it hit those speeds that it did. But eventually, basically we were able to see the radar was picking up those strong velocities, but they were showing at about 2,000 feet, something like that, and we weren't getting any reports from at the ground below that in that area west of the river. So I figured those high winds were just going to stay above the ground. They weren't going to translate down to the surface. And then I got a text from down the river. I was home, wasn't even there, and they said, "What in the world is going on? This wind is crazy." And that's kind of when we got our first reports, and I relayed those onto the Weather Service, and then they were able to kind of nowcast those as well. But yeah, it was a surprise. We haven't had one of those in quite some time, and it moved all the way across the Memphis metro, and there was some tree damage. We'd had a fair amount of rain, so it was pretty easy to topple over some smaller trees that were just getting their first leaves and so forth. So
yeah,
pretty big event.
You're right. We don't get those in the southeast very much. They're more indigenous to, I'd say, the Great Lakes region, where there's occluding lows and they kind of fan out more cold fronts below them. But yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting.
All right, guys. Well, it's about 9:10, so we'll make this our last open mic discussion. But I think that we may have to do this maybe once a month or something. Just have one Wednesday a month of just having open discussion. I think it's really cool that all the different ways that we've had the conversation tonight. But Patrick alluded to it just a little bit ago. This is the SPC Severe Weather Outlook issued, and this is the day 5. And as you can see, from Jersey all the way down to Georgia and to Alabama, Eastern Carolina, North Carolina, much of South Carolina is in the 15% chance of seeing some type of severe weather. So, guys, let's kind of talk a little bit about this, and we'll make it our last topic of discussion tonight. What are we looking at? Should we already be scared now, Patrick, or should we wait a little bit?
I'm running away as we speak. I'm looking at. I saw that this morning. I text our chief meteorologist, Scannon Medwick, and our weekend morning meteorologist, Lord Routenkrantz. I texted him. I said, "What is this sorcery that I'm seeing on day 5? Like, I've been out of the weather office for a day, and I was like, what is this?" So I go in and I start looking at it, and I was like, interesting. You got a 992 low way up in like Ontario, and then a trailing cold front. I mean, it's not the classic severe weather situation, but could we see some strong winds? Yeah, I mean, it's not a question. So we'll see how that all plays out. I mean, it's definitely going to be an elongated type of situation, probably broken line across. I mean, a very long swath. I mean, stretching all the way from about Auburn, Alabama, all the way up to New York. I mean that's a big line that would have to roll through here. So I mean, you're probably talking about either several lines or a very broken line moving through.
That's what I saw. I mean, there's not much in the way of directional shear whatsoever, at least here in my neck of the woods. But I mean, anytime the models start putting out 2, 3, 3,500 cape, I'd certainly sit up and take notice, because it doesn't happen all that often around here, I'll be completely honest. But it looks more liney to me, squall liney. It doesn't look like discrete in any way, shape, or form. Could that change? Of course, things will certainly change over the next several days, but certainly has my attention, because up here in Virginia, you want that low over the Great Lakes, and then you get that trailing cold front, warm front interaction. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how things play out here over the next couple of days.
And for us, it's just like, if it's way up there in Canada, I mean, it's kind of hard for us to get a whole lot of severe weather in southeastern North Carolina in the first place. I mean, really, you have to have the low track kind of up towards the Ohio River Valley for us to get anything major down here. So we're kind of looking at that and saying, that will be a marginal day.
Yeah. And Patrick, your sea breezing also has a sort of a stabilizing effect on some of the storm lines. I noticed that southeast North Carolina is a lot more convective than we are in Charleston, South Carolina. It seems like we've been protected by our cooler shelf waters more so than any other time when we get these inshore sea breezes, and the water temperatures are still around 77, 78 degrees. So they're warming. They're almost at that capacity of that convective capacity at 28 Celsius. So we're getting closer to that. And you guys, I think, hit near 80 right around Wilmington. So you're right on the cusp. So we're getting into that where the sea breeze will actually fire off more storms. Yeah. When the water gets about 84 to 88 degrees, we know what happens. So.
Yeah, we know exactly what happens during those. You get the sea breeze boundary to move inland. We've had some pretty stout sea breezes, even within the last couple of weeks, just kind of plowing through. We only cover 5 counties. And plowing through all the 5 counties and getting all the way to I-95. But that stabilizing effect here lately, especially when we look back to the last time we had a major severe weather situation, February 24th, I mean, that sea breeze actually helped us out to not have a major severe weather situation all the way down to the coast. Now, granted, we had big time storms back to the west of us, not as bad as even what David saw up there along that warm front that day. That was a very interesting day. I think we could have a case study on that one. Because weren't you guys like 45 degrees or something like that? It had supercells. But that sea breeze has been a very nice thing to keep us from not seeing a lot of severe weather. But once you get to that convective temperature, once that thing's coming off of the ocean, it can get a little rough and get a little nasty down here. We'll pop a severe thunderstorm warning and a flood advisory, no problem.
All right, guys. Well, I forgot we have one last one. Eric sent this via Twitter before he decided to come on the show. Eric, do you want to pose your question to everybody?
Was that about the chaser selfies?
Yes, the chaser.
Ask yourself a question.
Yeah. So here's the question, and that is it a bad thing? Is it in a bad light to take a picture, a selfie with a tornado in the background? So I mean, if you're just photoing the tornado itself is one thing, but if you put yourself in the picture and you smile and you say, "Look at me, I have a tornado in the background," is that in bad taste? I want to know what you guys think.
I think it's a metaphor for life.
That's about it. I think you're right. There's always something around the corner.
I feel like you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. If it's like a small tornado out in the middle of the cornfield and there's no significant danger to human life, especially your own life, and there's no there's no damage being done with it at that time of the picture, or that it has caused damage through its history, then maybe yeah. But like if it were I can't remember the name of the city now, but if it were a tornado that had gone through a town and caused lots of damage, and then you get a picture of it like just after it moved out of that town, that's in poor taste. So it really has to be a human nature judgment. Like, has it done harm, and will this be in poor taste?
Yeah, I think we could probably all agree that if you have a farmhouse being blown away behind you as you take the picture, it's probably in bad taste. But it's interesting because I've seen pictures previously where like a wedding photo with the tornado in the background. You probably guys have seen something similar to that. And this question has never come up with something like that. It's just all of a sudden when in the last couple of weeks there's been a couple where people have snap that picture, and it looks fairly benign. The tornado's way off in the distance. It's obviously a great big field out there, and some people's just getting their panties in a wad, I guess. So I don't know.
And I agree with what Kit said. It comes down to making a judgment call about whether or not it's going to go plowing through a town or not. I mean, you're not going to. I wouldn't suggest doing that in the southeast because, I mean, you got trees, you got hills, you got houses all over the place. But out in the plains where there's wide open spaces for miles and miles and miles, I think anybody who's ever wanted to see a tornado has wanted to see it in that environment and not in the jungle down here in the southeast. Yeah. So I think that making the judgment call on whether or not you're going to do that, I mean, personally, would I do it? Maybe. But that's because I'm a huge weather nerd and I want to be in front of a tornado. But you need to know where you are and what that thing is done or what it is doing, and if it's going to be out in the middle of a field, if you think it's going to stay out in the middle of a big cornfield, or if it's going to go ram right into a town and cause EF4 damage.
Yeah, and the other take I've seen on that defending that is that, if you're weather nerds like all of us and you are able to pick out which spot you needed to be and get within driving distance to be able to actually see one of those things, it's almost, and obviously it's not doing damage to, commerce and people, then it's almost kind of a celebratory thing. Hey, I made a great forecast. I got in position to see this phenomenal event, and why not celebrate it? So
I can agree with that. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
There's been a lot of chatter there's always chatter about the chaser community, but if you're on social media the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of chatter about chasers in general. So
I saw somebody get lit into earlier today. I can't remember. I got a text message from a fellow Met and was saying, it's like, go check out this Twitter. And I read through some of the tweets, and he was just laying into the chaser community. And I think I didn't see where it stemmed off of. So I'm not 100% where exactly it came from, but it was interesting, and I saw his point even without seeing the initial set-off point.
Yeah, I haven't been able to see what all the fuss is about, but just like you, Patrick, just been catching bits and pieces on Twitter and stuff, and it's definitely, I know Mike Smith, who was on with us a few weeks back, he's actually wrote a blog post on why storm chasers chase, and then there's another one on why people shouldn't chase. So it seems like there's always some drama out in the chaser community, especially out in the Midwest. So, all right, guys. Well, do we have anything else to add on? I know we've ran a little bit past our allotted time, so I think this was fun.
Everybody had their little bit of a rant, and I will bring up mine since it's a rant show tonight. The House of Representatives Bill 3538, the Metropolitan Weather Hazards Protection Act of 2015, is still dying in committee.
Wow.
The last action was on September 17th, 2015, when it was introduced to the House, presented, referred to the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, and there it has sat. So everybody write your Congress members. I'm probably going to try and find all of the people who sit on that committee, and I think it's about time that we share their email and start to badger them to, hey, take action on this, because yeah, the budget might be something that you can debate on and take sides on, but this is more human life that could be at stake. So this is a little more pressing than debating and squabbling over little bits of legislature.
I still look at that and I say, why in the hell is Charlotte sitting there without a radar? I don't get it. I don't get it. Every time I look at, I'm trying to find a decent radar image. It's like you're scanning 6,000 feet up over a major metropolitan area. I've got a radar in the backyard down here in Wilmington. I can scan over Wilmington at 1,400 feet. But it's due time. I mean, I don't understand why this is even an issue.
I don't get it. Charlotte is one of the fastest growing cities in the country. A lot of commerce taking place. I think the airport was just voted like the 4th busiest in the United States. So Charlotte is a very huge metropolitan area with over 1 million people now. well over a million. And like you said, there's no proper coverage, and if you can actually extend it even up into Greensboro, there's not really a lot of coverage up in Greensboro as well. So
because there's a swath, and granted it is out in the middle of like Stanley County, outside of Salisbury, but there's still a swath of land in the NC Piedmont that has coverage that isn't below 14,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, sure, it's not as populated as Charlotte, but still, that's ridiculous. That, like, you don't. I could pull up a map of the radar coverage of the United States, but I'm not going to. But there's only places like that aren't NEXRAD covered below 14,000 feet, but they're all out in like Utah or middle of Arizona where there is nobody who lives out there. And they do actually have radar over there, but it's military-based radar. So there's still coverage, but no one lives there versus over here in North Carolina, around Charlotte, around Greensboro, around Winston-Salem, where it's such a populated area that it's ridiculous that we don't have that yet.
And I remember I used to work in Greenville, Mississippi. Scanning the radar there was horrible. From Memphis or from Little Rock, Jackson, you're not looking anywhere below 10,000 feet. And granted, I mean, this is market 192 out of 210. But, I mean, it was tough, and especially being in a severe weather market. If you really want to go chasing, go chase in the Mississippi Delta. But you know, we would be on air and be struggling to find circulations. We had a situation. It was 2012, October 2012. Had a lot of storms come through. It was a day that I think we had a 10% hatched tornado risk over the Delta. Ended up with multiple tornadoes that day. And there was one storm that rolled right over Greenville, Mississippi. Ended up causing like 90-mile-an-hour straight-line wind damage all the way down the main drag. Couldn't see it. The only thing that you could see, you were looking at 10,000 feet, you're looking at the rear inflow notch dashing in there at like 100 knots or something like that. You didn't know if it was getting transferred down to the ground or not. Now, granted, once you got into Greenville and you saw how much rain had fallen, you're like, yeah, that was probably getting transferred down, at least at some entity, and you see everything kind of pushed down in one location. But that was tough in itself, and that was in a small market. I mean, granted, we covered a lot of counties, but it was I think our households we had 55,000 households or something like that, and in Wilmington we're like closer to 100 close to 200,000 or something like that. So, you know, it's tough whenever you have a large metropolitan area that is dealing with things that you would see in very rural areas of anywhere in the United States.
Patrick, I'll second that. That area in the Arkansas, Mississippi Delta there, I mean, that's also where most of our strong storms come from, coming into Memphis, from the southwest, feeding up to the northeast. And I just took a look at the radar coverage map, and you're exactly right. The coverage is 10,000 or higher down there. And I think there was talk about a radar going in, I think maybe Louisiana Monroe might be putting one in, like in northern Louisiana, which would cover part of that, but it still wouldn't get far enough north, and of course that would probably be a private radar. It'd be harder to get access to. And
well, I know that they had just put in a radar at ULM at the campus. I guess it was about maybe 2 years ago, and they had talked about. I went down to the Weather Service in Jackson for a meeting in 2012, and they had mentioned that they were actually looking at adding a radar site from ULM somewhere out there in the Delta. I think they said somewhere around Morehouse Parish, which is in the northeastern part of the state. So, I mean, you know, it's still going to be one of those situations that if you don't have the correct, most weather vendors are not going to allow for a private radar like that to get into the data system, and you have to ask for permission for that as well. And those radars they're not very wide band either. I mean, you're looking at maybe 50 miles away from the radar, if that. I know some of the it was very similar to the radars that they were putting in around Dallas-Fort Worth, and I don't think that those go out more than maybe 12 or 15 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for the conversations. I'll let everyone, Patrick, you and Eric, and everyone else, give you guys the opportunity to share your Twitter handles so our followers can get a hold of you if they want to.
Oh, I guess I'll start. You can get with me on the Twitters on at Patrick Ellis WX, on the Facebooks, Patrick Ellis Meteorologist, and I think that's about it.
I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you and I talk a lot when I visit your part of the world, but give us the best spot to enjoy a good place to eat in the Wilmington area if we are vacationing in that area.
What kind of food are you looking for? Are you looking for seafood? You looking for barbecue?
What is Patrick's favorite place to go?
Where is my favorite place to go? I love breakfast spots. And one of the best breakfast spots that I've gone to is the Dixie Grill, downtown Wilmington. I think it's almost world famous for some of the stuff that they cook down there. I went down there, I guess it was about a week and a half ago, and had steak and eggs, big old fluffy biscuits, nice cut of meat. I mean, like, just perfect. There's also another omelet place up on Market Street that we go to called Goody Goody. It's been around since the 70s, and good spot if you want a good omelet.
I'm surprised you didn't say Brits Donuts.
See, we won't go into that. I like Brits, but that's not where I'm going to go eat every single day.
Okay, all right. That's Tim Buckley always tells me. He's like, dude, you got to go there. I've yet to go to Brits. So I've got to try that out. They say, and
they will ask it when you go in there. If you ask for two, they're going to ask if they're going to give you 2 dozen. They're not going to give you 2 donuts. So you have to specify if you only want 2 donuts or 2 dozen.
Yeah.
I'll take 2 dozen.
All right, Eric, you want to give away your Twitter handle and how we can follow you there if we're in the Memphis area?
Sure thing. I appreciate, again, you guys having me on tonight. Thank you. I can be found at memphisweather.net on Facebook and at memphisweather1. That's the number 1, at memphisweather1 on Twitter. And I'm on Google Plus and YouTube and Instagram and all those other places. Normally, Memphis Weather 1 will find you just about anywhere. So we're everywhere you want to be. If you come to Memphis, we'd love to have you. Give me a shout out, and I'll give you the forecast before you get here. And if you're in town, go try. I'm gonna move away from barbecue. We're not gonna talk about barbecue anymore. We're gonna go with Gus's Fried Chicken. Nice little local joint that I think still uses the same grease they started with 60 years ago in the little backwoods area. And you can't go here if you're not going to have barbecue. You can't leave here without having some Gus's Fried Chicken.
I've been there and I've got the cup to show it.
Awesome. So you'll back me up on that.
Yes.
Keep skimming the top of the grease, right?
Yeah. All right. And David, if we're up in the Charlottesville area, how can we get a hold of you?
At WX Reese, R-E-E-S-E, like Reese's Pieces, and you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/CBS19weather. And as far as places to eat, let's see, we only have about 350 or so places, individual restaurants here in the city limits of Charlottesville or the surrounding county. And it's not a very big town. Let's just put it that way. That's a lot of restaurants. So 2 places in which you can't go wrong. You can either walk along the corner. I've heard Boylan Heights is really good. I haven't eaten there personally, but I've heard it's incredible. Or if you go down the downtown mall, if you're hankering for a burger, Citizen Burger, I had that last night, is really good. If you're looking for ice cream, they have that there. They have pretty much everything around here. Also, if you like wine, Monticello Wine Trail. They have a bunch of wineries around here and also starting to get into breweries and everything else. So if you're into that kind of stuff, Charlottesville is definitely the place for you.
And we got a bunch of beer down here in Wilmington, too. If you like beer, come on down to Wilmington.
All right, guys. Well, y'all, thank you so much for coming on. And maybe when we do this again, we'll have all of you guys back on and we'll rant some more about I I'm sure with tropical season coming up, there'll be a lot of grants that we have. So we'll continue on the tradition. All right, guys, have a great week. Next week we're talking about hurricanes with who, Peter? Who are we talking hurricanes with?
Everybody up and down the East Coast.
You have put this show together, so you tell us who we're talking about.
I did. We're gonna have Rob Fowler, who Shay got for us, but we also have Matt Lanza from Houston, Rob Dunn's from Florida, Tim something or other, I can't say his last name, from Virginia, and yeah, that's it. There you go. So we got a nice lineup.
All right, well, join us next week for the Hurricane Special, and for the next, actually 3 weeks, we're gonna have 3 Hurricane shows in a row. So join us with that. You'll know everything about hurricanes that you'll ever need to know, and even more. So, anyways,
And probably a few things you don't need to know.
That's right. That's right. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week.